I think the less upfront costs, the better. As a state agency, you don't want to be investing a lot of stuff upfront and not seeing results right away. But by putting the burden of a profit on the company by saying you don't get paid unless you deliver, and after you deliver, after customers are actually using your product, that's when the pay kicks in. That was really key to creating an incentive for the company to put working machines in places that they knew they'd be meeting foot traffic and actually tracking transactions. That was probably one of the most important things.
Well, joining me today is Michigan Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate, Jocelyn Benson. Jocelyn, thank you so much for making time to join.
Oh, great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So you have such an amazing background. I would just love if you could walk us through your history up through how you got to being Secretary of State, and we'll talk about some of the great results that you were able to deliver in that role. But just how'd you get into government? Why'd you do it?
Yeah, I mean, well, so my parents were special education teachers. And so growing up in a middle class family with public school teachers as parents, I was really instilled with this sense of responsibility that we all have to make sure everyone has a seat at the table, that everyone is a part of the conversation about how we can improve access to well-paying jobs, access to educational opportunity, and also how hard teachers in particular work, but folks across the board to ensure who are committed to sort of service sector industries to ensuring that that people's lives can be a little bit better. And from there, I actually went to Alabama, where I worked in civil rights as a civil rights advocate to investigate hate groups and hate crimes around the country. And that also really showed me how important it is to have the moral courage, no matter where you are as a leader or elsewhere, to stand up to hate and stand up to injustice and actually push forth equity and an agenda for equity for all. So from there, I actually moved to Detroit to clerk for a civil rights judge, Damon Keith, who was an incredible mentor to me and really lived a life. He was on the bench till his like late 80s, 90s. He would actually swore me into office as Secretary of State, but an extraordinary icon in the city who also encouraged me to teach as well, where I, after clerking for him, began teaching at Wayne State. And as a teacher, I was just an incredible opportunity to kind of continue my life as an educator. And that's where I thought I'd stay. But then I saw a lot of problems in government not working well, not actually ensuring everyone could vote in particular, and wanted to actually run for Secretary of State to make the case that we could do better. That if you just leave politics to the politicians, a lot of things don't get done. But if you bring in folks from all the sectors to actually try to lead as well and fight through the political thicket to move the ball forward, you can do transformational things. So I did that not just at Wayne State as a teacher, but also as a dean. I ultimately became the head of the law school at Wayne State, where I'm proud to say we cut tuition, increased scholarship opportunities, and moved the law school from being ranked in the fourth tier of law schools nationwide to being in the top 50 where it is today. And from there, took that experience really running this infrastructure within a bigger infrastructure to the state, where I became the CEO of one of our state's largest agencies as Secretary of State, because I not just oversee our elections, as I know we're going to talk about, I also oversee the Department of Motor Vehicles, which, is essentially, I run the DMV. And so I'm very popular. Everyone loves.
Which is, that's the classic thing. That
Right. It's like the poster child.
DMV lines. Yeah.
Right. The poster child for a broken system, and was able to show that I know how to take a broken system and actually, through innovation, through best practices, through data-driven decision-making, through taking folks on the outside of government and putting them inside to say, how can we do things better? We were able to transform this butt of all of the jokes of government inefficiency and make it one of the more efficient government agencies, not just in Michigan, but nationwide. So I'm really proud of that. I know we're going to talk about that, but yeah, I'm not a politician is the essence of it. I'm an administrator and an educator. And I love data. I love research. And I love taking great ideas and putting them into practice.
I love that. Thank you for walking me through that, and thank you for your work. On the DMV thing, what was, like, from an operational perspective, you talk about it being a broken system. How would you describe what exactly was broken?
Well, we didn't deliver on any of our promises, and instead of making people's life easier, we made it harder. We did not save people time, which oftentimes drove up costs for folks,
Yep.
and overall was an albatross. No one wanted to visit the Secretary of State office because you knew it was going to take up your whole day, and for a lot of families, they couldn't afford to do that. So when I took office in my first 100 days, I visited every single one of our 130 branches because you can't fix what you can't see, what you
Wait,
can't.
say that again. In the first 100 days, you visited 131 branches.
Correct. Yep. All across the state in every single county, and took notes and had, a form I would fill out to collect data, ask questions. I talked to the employees, and I actually to this day have still my binders of every single branch because I went back many times throughout my tenure and tracked our progress,
Yeah.
so that there's constant transparency, constant metric, drive to metrics, to actually move the needle. But I started by just wrapping my arms around everything and saying, what do we got here? Lifting up the hood and saying, what do we need to really do to clean this up? And what I saw was unacceptable. I saw mothers sitting on the floor in our Novi office with 5 kids waiting for hours to renew their license. I talked to auto dealers who, one of our most frequent customers, in any given day, never knew how long they'd have to spend away from the office dealing with this administrative bureaucracy. And I talked to employees who were either seasonal or temporary, didn't get health care as a result, and never knew any given day when they'd go home at night. I mean, imagine not having any say into when your day ended. It's supposed to end at 5, but you work until the last person is served. And if you have a 3-hour wait at 5 o'clock, you're there till 8 o'clock.
Hmm.
No questions asked. So as I would be there later in the day, I'd talk to stressed out parents who worked for the state, showed up at 8 a.m. right on time, and
Yeah.
then were stressed trying to find childcare or figure out who's going to take their kid to soccer practice, or just figure out who's going to make dinner for the family tonight,
Totally.
because we had an inefficient system. So it was very broken. It was mired in neglect. Many of the staff I talked to had never even met a Secretary of State prior to my coming into the office.
Hmm.
Certainly a lot of um, folks using the office were surprised to see the boss walk in.
I bet. Yeah.
But it gave me a good glimpse into what was actually broken and just the massive number of inefficiencies. You just walk in and take a number, and
Do you
if
think?
you're Mhm.
Building on that point, do you feel like how much of that was like how would you classify those problems? Like, how much of it was like a funding problem versus a ability to make decisions problem versus
Yeah,
a process problem? You know what I mean?
yeah, it was a problem of neglect. No one cared to make it any better, and we all just accepted that this was the way things were. I mean, there weren't people protesting outside of Secretary of State's offices demanding
Yeah.
no way, right? Just sort of like, and as a result, we never demanded more from our government leaders.
Yeah.
And as a result, they never pushed for more. And we did not actually we
Hmm.
actually streamlined services and cut our budget
Hmm.
in a divided government, because we were wasting a lot of money on contracts, consultants, things that weren't actually delivering
Delivering value.
results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating to just also look at our budget and say, oh, here's a $200,000 contract that got us a 30-page report that I already knew. Like, I
Yeah.
just went to a branch office and could have told you all this, right?
Yeah.
And so stuff like that was really eye opening. But it all got back to just there was no not you needed bold leadership that was going to be data driven and committed to results, and a real clear sense of what the goal was, which in my view was wait times down, voter turnout up. That was it.
Yeah.
And building on a
Clarity.
strategy to accomplish those two things. That was kind of
Yeah.
it.
Absolute clarity. So that's I view that as an insanely inspiring story
Mm,
because you required less money in order
yeah,
to do the job. People
yeah.
were able to get through and get the things done that they needed faster. That's like an overwhelming success story, and one that I'm so glad you shared. Do you feel like the there was like what I guess one question I'd be curious to understand your take on. There's a quote from Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business
Mhm.
partner, and he said, "If you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome." And
Mm,
so I'm curious, like
Yeah.
With that lens in mind, what do you, were there incentives behind the scenes there that caused the environment you're describing?
No, not like you would think so traditionally. And I say that because I was one of my questions when I started. What can we do to incentivize?
Yeah,
Uh, you can't even like award someone Employee of the Month under kind of civil service regulations. You can't necessarily give people raises for different things or hitting different marks. It's not set up that way,
yeah,
and that's one of the reasons I think get back to sort of how we got here in the private sector. You can
right.
you've got a lot more freedom to deliver those incentives. What we actually had to do was then sort of define the incentive as delivering on our promise of effective and efficient service. And in doing so, creating a better workplace environment that would enable people to be able to get home on time. Which, frankly,
Yeah,
I think there were three things that were brought to my attention early on. One is that we did not allow any of our branch office employees to even have water at their desks. Like they would sit there all day, break for 15 minutes, like 2 hours, 3 hours, no, like what? And they shared this with me. And that day, as I met with branch employees, I went into the executive office of the old administration. This was during the transition, and they were literally eating cake at their desks. Like it was like this contrast between this disconnect. So one of the things we
yeah,
did
that's
was
a head
we actually
scratcher.
got everyone a water bottle who worked in the branches, and it was a
Yeah,
very small gesture, but it was a culture shift that we defined as we're going to take care of you and make sure you're valued.
yeah.
And so that was key. And then what we also did was eliminated all part-time, temporary, and seasonal employees in our
Okay.
branches, made everyone full-time so that everyone had stability and healthcare.
Right.
That was really important to me as well from a principal standpoint. That created a healthier culture. And then by actually making the government, the agencies work well, the branches work well, moving more things online so that
Yeah,
there was less foot traffic, creating self-service stations so there was less foot traffic.
yeah.
We also just made the branch office experience more pleasurable so that there were no longer any waits. They were no longer dealing with angry customers. And the system was efficient enough that everyone was getting out on time. I actually track overtime every week so that if at any point people are staying past, let's say 5:30 for whatever reason, it's a red flag that something is going on and we have to fix it.
Yeah.
So we just made the office run better. We treated our employees better, both in sort of when they're on the job and giving them that clarity and fair compensation when they're off. And that was enough to get everyone as a team working effectively to make this new model work.
Amazing. One thing I read was that online, you talked about online transactions. I read they went from 28% to 60% during
Yeah.
your time as Secretary of State. What was the unsexy version of how that went down? Like, what did you guys do to move to that level of online
Yeah.
fulfillment?
It's we moved title transactions online essentially, and that was a big part of it. So I asked in one of my first days, "What is the most frequent transaction that someone comes into the branch
Yeah,
office for?"
yeah,
Thinking
right.
if we just take that and move it online, right? Move foot traffic,
That should move
and
the needle. Yeah,
yeah, but I also started with the goal. I said, okay, right now, 25% of our services are happening outside of a branch, 75% in. Let's flip it. Let's get to like 70-30 or 60-40,
yeah.
60% outside, 40% in. So we had that goal. And then we were like, okay, how do we get there? Take the most frequent transaction and move it out.
Yep.
And then we had to pass legislation to enable title transactions to happen online, which
So you
other
needed
states.
legislation to do that. So you needed a law to be passed.
Yeah. Hmm. So we
Okay.
started working through that, building, in a bipartisan government. It was a Republican led legislature at the time, passed the law. No one was really like, up in arms over this particular thing.
Yeah,
It was just
relatively
making
objective.
government,
You
yeah,
wanted the
work better.
DMV to be faster, right?
Yeah. People weren't like, no, I want to go to the branch office.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we got the law passed and then
How
we
long did
learned,
that take, end to end?
maybe 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Because you had to write the law, find the sponsor, you figure
Yeah.
out. And we also had to look at the system that other states were using to actually build it out online,
Okay.
and make sure it was secure. And not all title transactions are qualified, just sort of different things there.
Yeah.
And then the next piece is educating the customer that they now have this option
Yeah.
because at any given time, even when I took over, 50% of people coming into offices still didn't have to come in. They could do their services online. So the education piece was something I underestimated how important it is
Yeah.
to train the public on new ways to use and interact with government,
Yeah.
which was an entire sort of strategy that we developed. But all that to say that we took that online. That tipped the needle. And then the other thing was the self-service stations, putting self-service stations in grocery stores. So we were meeting people where they are. We
Right.
didn't have to educate about this new option because people would see them
They
physically
see
when
it.
they right.
Yeah.
And that we started to see the numbers go down as well. And then we just kept tracking it. And every time we'd wanted to tweak it, we'd just look for more ways to get people out of the office. But it got more to the point of we got to the point where the infrastructure was set. The biggest challenge, frankly, and what took the longest was transitioning the public's mind to this new way of getting
Yeah.
their transaction done, because a lot of folks do just go into the office and that's what they
Right.
do.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
totally. Well, that's what we've been trained to do, right? And so
right.
it's like it's a behavioral change that, and those are, in my view, those are always really hard to do. But
Mm.
so on the kiosk point, that was essentially like a kiosk that just so everyone's aware, like that was a kiosk where you could do your title transaction, you could do your driver license renewal, anything that was an online transaction that you could do from your own computer, you were providing a public way for them to do that. And then I would imagine, like in terms of all the things that you did to educate the public that they could do these transactions online, how big was that kiosk initiative in terms of just increasing awareness?
It was significant. Because it was something I could talk about with ease everywhere I went. You
Right.
can renew your license while you do your grocery shopping. It was a key goal of mine running for the office, and it was something that we went to Indiana just next door. They were already doing it. They
Yeah.
already had the system set up, and it cost nothing to bring it to Michigan because the transaction cost is actually what gives the company who runs the kiosks their profit.
Mm.
So we didn't have to pay any upfront costs. We also put something in the contract that required anything that broke to be fixed within 24 hours. Because another thing I noticed when I visited the branches is that we
Yeah.
did have a few self service stations, but at any given point, 30 to 40% of them were not working or
Yeah.
more, because you had to have an employee come out of the branch. They were only in branches. You had to have an
Yeah.
employee come out, fix it, figure out. Sometimes it was just like putting more paper in the printer. No one has time to do that when they've got a 5 hour
Yeah.
line they're trying to
Right.
work through. So you'd have like self service stations that just weren't working in our
Yeah.
branches. And it was, again, like a poster child of government inefficiency.
Right.
So our self service stations actually send a signal to the company whenever they break, so that they have 24 hours to fix it, or else they break their contract. And then again, transparency is our friend. We track on a regular basis. We can make sure every single self-service station is online and working. And as soon as we get the alert something's down, we have people whose job it is just to track that and make sure they're working at any point.
I want to ask you a couple of questions related to that. So, is there any insight there from like a technology procurement point of view that you take with you, and that you've
Yeah.
applied in other places?
Yeah, well, I think the less upfront cost, the better. I'm
Yeah.
I'm just I'm very impatient. So I don't like to, obviously as a state agency, you don't want to be investing a lot of stuff up front and not seeing results right away. But by putting the burden of a profit on the company by saying you don't get paid unless you deliver, and after you deliver, after
Yeah.
customers are actually using your product, that's when the
Right.
payment kicks in. That was really key to creating an incentive for the company to
Yeah.
put working machines in places that they knew they'd be meeting foot traffic and
Yeah.
actually tracking transactions. That was probably one of the most important things. And the second, I think, is just you don't ever have to recreate the wheel. Before we did anything, we worked with actually Sevilla to like look what every one of the other states' DMVs was doing to
Yeah.
try to solve a lot of these problems. And we also looked to the private sector, banks and others, energy companies, to see what they were doing to increase the speed at which they could handle a lot of transactions with
Yeah.
customers, and just brought best practices to bear, which was probably, and then looked at the vendors that were working. So to me, success breeds success. And so if a vendor is having success in one place, that was the best selling point, obviously, to
For
bring it
sure.
to Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Was there anything that you try? I'm curious. Also, like we've talked about and I want to move to the election infrastructure in a second, but we've talked about a lot of things that worked, right? Was there anything that you tried that you feel like was
Hmm.
not as successful as you thought it would be in terms of this
Hmm.
DMV transformation?
Yeah, I think the yes, the the model originally was having a greeter in every branch,
Okay.
so that when you come in, you have an ally working through whatever, oh, you can do this online, or oh, let me
Sure.
schedule a visit because we're really busy right now, or whatever. Sometimes if people weren't, if the public wasn't ready for a new model, for like, or that didn't necessarily work in every place. So I think what we found is, though you could have a good idea, uh, what is going to work in Detroit or is needed in a high traffic office in Livonia or Troy or Ann Arbor, is not what a customer in Alpena needs,
Yeah.
or in Escanaba. And
Sure.
so we quickly had to shift when we would think one, statewide idea could work, and realize that a lot of times one size fits all solutions, though they be data driven and successful in some places, may not be needed or welcome or useful, and may just be kind of inefficient in others. And
Yeah.
so it's why visiting every office was so important coming in, because I could have someone call me from our Sault Ste. Marie office or our St. Ignace office and be like, yeah, yeah, we don't need a greeter. Like, we're good.
Yeah.
And that saves us money.
Yeah.
So understanding how things will actually play out on the local level and the local variances, and meeting
Yeah.
that too, is critical.
Yeah, and that sounds like, is it fair to say that the takeaway there is, allowing some sort of decision making still at the local level, at the proverbial coal face where the work
Yes.
happens, versus
Crucial.
just being top down about it?
Crucial. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have regional, or a structure where we have regional leads, and then of course our branch office managers, but ensuring we're continuing to have a feedback loop, or uplifting our voices there, is important. We actually created a office of continuous innovation. Again, 4 or 5 people, and their job is basically just to sort of see how things play out and adjust and adapt as we go, as local variances and needs bubble up, and
Yeah.
give us more information about what's working and what's not. And they do surveys, they do anecdotal and qualitative work as well, to make sure we're collecting data in all forms. And then they have a requirement to report things out to me, so there's accountability and transparency built into the whole feedback system.
So cool. Thank you for walking through that. I want to also ask you about the election infrastructure. I think this is a great example of technology kind of being foundational to the way that government works today. And if I have my facts straight, I think Michigan went from 34th in election security to second. And I'm just curious, from what did it take from your leadership team? What did it take from the team on the ground? All the workers that have to like scale up in order to do it, the vendors who are involved. What was kind of the main driving force behind that improvement?
The voters, more than anything, and a sort of knowledgeable leadership team that wasn't going to be driven by politics or partisan agendas, but just, what does the data show us about how to achieve our goal? And the very gratifying thing was, when you listen to the voters, and you look at the data, and you have a very clear goal. For ours, it was turnout up. Uh,
Yeah.
and obviously a lot of sub goals, like, no spoiled ballots, or
Yeah.
ballots coming back on time, but turnout up. If you have that North Star, that was kind of it that enabled us to get from where we were, which were consistently low turnout elections, to having back to back to back the highest turnout elections in our state's history, even in the midst of a pandemic, even in the midst of this historic, like, brutal scrutiny over
Yeah.
our democracy. We were still able to break turnout records in 2020, in 22, and in 2024, and do so managing a system that includes 1,500 local clerks who administer everything on the local level, and then 83 county clerks, and
Right.
then the Bureau of Elections at the statewide. But it began with voter driven initiatives in 2018 in particular, that amended our state constitution to put the best ideas already into our law, from a citizen redistricting commission to
Right.
no reason absentee voting. And then citizens did it again in 22. And it was my entire legislative agenda that they like just enacted. And so that meant my job was just to show up and administer it and implement
Yeah.
it. I was ready, because that's what I'd done my whole like professional career, was study how to implement these programs. So
Yeah.
you then had an administrator who could take a policy and make it real, in partnership with this sort of tiered system of 1,600 other election officials, all of whom had to be trained and prepared, and then obviously voters who we needed to educate and inform in an era of misinformation.
Yeah. Well, one thing you said that like you kind of made it a throwaway comment, uh, but I think it's critical. You said like turnout up, right?
Yeah.
And having clarity of goal and fewer spoiled ballots. Those sound like if you just listen to you talk, those sound obvious, right?
Mhm.
But I'm sure that like coming up with the precise goal so that you can actually get that clear, like that's not an easy thing to do. So I'm curious of like how did you come up with that level of clarity to be able to distill the complex world of elections into two words: turnout up.
Yeah. One, I think I had a deep background in the work and knew that that was kind of just in general a driving goal. How do we increase engagement? How do we increase turnout?
Yeah.
More thematically, how do we make sure every citizen knows their power to hold their elected officials accountable? But it was honed essentially through strategic planning sessions, which I start every year with in my department. And
Okay.
spoiler alert, we're the only agency in state government right now, apparently, that does strategic planning sessions and has like a strategic plan. I've been told,
Hmm.
so which is fascinating to me,
Yeah.
because like, how do you track
But what
progress
are
to
you aiming for if you're not doing that?
yeah. And so, but by having a 2-day strategic planning session every January throughout my whole term, in which we just like throw everything on the table that we want to do and organize it,
Yep.
what bubbles up are these sort of like overarching sort of meta goals.
Yeah.
Okay. What's all this customer service stuff designed to do to make it easier, right? What is that? How does that manifest itself? No wait times. What is all this voting stuff designed to do to get more people to vote, right?
Yeah.
Like turn out up. And so we, through a strategic planning process and getting a lot of smart people in the room, um, from all sectors. I mean, we had national election experts coming to town. We had um, former secretaries of state from other states who had been
Okay.
very successful. Everyone, you brought smart people, thought leaders together, and had a
Yeah.
strategic planning session, and that was sort of what bubbled up as our top tier goals. And then we sort of broke it down. It was obviously it was an iceberg. There was much
Yeah.
more beneath the surface, but that was it.
I'd love to, and we could talk all day about those sessions, and because I think it's fascinating how you would actually organize something like that, and
Yeah,
the preparation that goes into it, getting the
yeah,
right people in the room. Again, you make it sound easy, but I think those things are actually really hard to execute. So just I give you props on that. Like I'd love to chat with someone on your team who actually put those together because I'm sure there's so many good insights. If no other state agencies are doing it, there's probably lessons that could be learned then, but maybe that's for another chat.
sure. Yeah, I mean, and the amazing thing is my COO at the time, Winnie Lau,
Yeah, no,
who
Winnie. Yeah,
right, yeah, she sort of set it up. We met during the transition. I brought her on board. She understood the assignment, and now, of course, she's the COO of the city of Detroit,
yeah,
doing the same sort of thing. So I think it's a lot about just seeing where things are successful and bringing in smart people who can execute a vision, like in anything,
yeah,
uh, and being willing to do that in a political system that oftentimes doesn't have incentives, doesn't always have the expectation of excellence,
yeah,
or change or like we're kind of used to things being broken, especially at
yeah,
the DMV.
right.
And so being unwilling to look at something that's always been and think that's how it always has to be, and bring in smart people who are disruptors and change agents and innovators in other sectors
Yeah,
to apply that to government. And frankly, that gets to like why I'm running for governor as well, right? My pillars now are similarly clear:
yeah,
costs down, wages up,
yeah,
and rights protected. Like that's it. That's the job
yeah,
of the next governor. And yeah, it manifests itself in more affordable healthcare and housing and energy costs and
yes,
diversifying jobs and creating a stronger economy. But at the
yeah,
end of the day, at the end of my first term as governor, I want to be able to say I drove down costs, I increased the average wage, or increased well-paying jobs in our state, and stood to defend our democracy once again against all the seeds that are being planted at the federal level to try to potentially interfere with it in the future.
yeah. And I think that so I heard generally people, places, infrastructure, and innovation, right? Could you
Yeah.
talk about one thing that I love about that is just the place aspect of it, right?
Mm.
What does it mean to you? Like what are some of the goals that you have as it relates to place?
Infrastructure and community. I think there's a lot of broken infrastructure under our roads in terms of just the pipes,
Yeah,
above our roads in terms of the electric grid. A lot of innovative things we're not doing, like fully transitioning to clean energy. Although I'm proud that we most recently passed some of the most forward-thinking clean energy transition legislation in the nation, which I'm excited as governor to implement in an effective way. But all of that means investing in places, mean building places where people with talent choose to call home,
yeah,
making Michigan the best place in the nation to call home for my kid, who's going to be, in 10 years, turning 19 and deciding where he's going to build his career.
same.
I want him to choose Michigan, right? That's
Yeah,
my
100%.
motivation. Yeah. And so what do we build? What places do we build
Yes.
to enable all of our loved ones to choose to call Michigan
For
home?
sure. I mean,
Um,
I remember going back to college how people would say like, "Oh, I can't wait to graduate and move to New York or
yeah.
Chicago or San Francisco," and that's super disappointing. I have three boys too, or
Mm,
three kids, 11, almost 11, 7 and 3, and I'm
mm,
with you. Like, I want
yeah.
them to be able to build careers in Michigan, and
Right.
so everything you're describing is near and dear to my heart. Talk to me
Yeah.
about the energy situation.
Yeah.
I think especially in the age of AI, the
Mm,
demand for energy is going up.
mhm.
Robotics is gonna, I think, have another impact on energy consumption, and I think there's a good argument to be made for like the places that have the lowest energy costs are going to be the places where investments are made, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
do you think that's fair?
Well, again, if rubric is costs down, wages up, rights protected,
Yeah.
how do we transition? I mean, so much of transitioning to a clean energy economy and a climate tech industry, building that here, will drive down costs,
Yes.
particularly energy costs, and will create new jobs in a clean energy sector, a growing sector, which is, I think, where we need to be thinking as we look to diversify our economy. So it starts by investing in places. So we've got transit and the communities that people are moving to. Look what they have and build that here. A lot of times it is ease of transportation. A lot of times it is other good schools and other things that we need to build so that
Yeah.
Michigan is able to compete with all those other states for those types of values. And then in addition to that, saying where are we going to be 10 years from now? What do we
Yeah.
need to build now to be an innovator in 2040 or in 2045? I think clean energy is a great example of that. The more we transition our economy, our energy infrastructure in that direction, the more we drive down the cost of energy and
100%.
create jobs in an emerging sector. So I think that to me is a low hanging fruit in what we should be investing in and bringing smart people to Michigan in addition to retaining our own talent to help us build out that economy.
What does that look like on the energy front? Like, I'm with you, and I think
Hmm.
it's also great news that like the clean energy that you're describing is also the lowest cost energy,
Right,
right?
right.
That is
A
now a
win-win.
fact, whereas I think 15 years ago it wasn't, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be more true in 5 years than it is today. Um, but I'm curious, like, like, if you were to think about it, does that mean like more solar? Does it mean
Mm,
more nuclear? Like,
mm.
what do you hope look like from an energy generation perspective? And
Yeah,
obviously we've got a lot of hydro here in Michigan too.
yeah.
What do you think the mix ought to look like as you think about 2040?
I think we look at the mix and we answer that question just three ways. One, where can jobs be created? And what sectors, what types of transition create the most jobs, short and long term? Secondly, what transitions best protect our environmental resources?
Yeah,
Certainly, we have 21% of the world's fresh water. How can
right.
we make sure we're protecting and preserving that, and ensuring our air is clean to breathe, and that we're investing in clean air because that's also what the transition to clean energy helps us do.
Right.
So, what's creating jobs? What's protecting our environment? And then what's the most efficient and sort of cost effective? Certainly, wind, solar, aligns with that. But I think that's going to also we have to sort of look at it through those lenses, but allow the data to lead you to the answer from there, and allow that to evolve as technologies emerge that become more efficient in some ways and not others, and build an infrastructure that's able to sort of adapt those new technologies while looking at through the lens of are we creating jobs, are we protecting our water and our air, and are we driving down costs and implementing the most efficient model for transitioning to the modern energy grid.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And I guess in closing, I just want to let's talk about, let's say that you are elected governor and you're two terms in. What year would that be when it's coming to a close? By the way.
I'm just focused on the next 6 months.
Yeah, that's. I guess
Something in the future.
fair enough. Yeah, let's say
2034? 2034.
yeah, in
Ish.
2034,
Yeah.
what is one thing that is false today that
Ah,
you hope will be true then?
that we have high-speed rail all across the state of Michigan that connects Detroit all the way up to Traverse City, to Ann Arbor, to Grand Rapids, and everywhere in between. And you can get from here to there and faster than it takes to drive. That's one thing. We don't
Yeah,
have high-speed transit right now. I'd like
yeah,
to see it in Michigan in 10 years. But more than anything, I want Michigan to be in 10 years. That's when my kid graduates
yeah,
um, from high school in 8 years. And so I want Michigan. What's perhaps false now that I want to be true then is that I want the vast majority of our kids who are graduating in any sector, at any school, to be choosing to stay in Michigan and not leave.
yeah, totally. And I cheers to that. And I think that we're fortunate to have the universities that we have,
Mm-hmm.
being great importers of talent, and hopefully we can capture some of those people. Capture is probably the wrong word. Hopefully we can make a compelling argument for some of those people to stick around afterwards as well.
For
Yeah,
sure, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing that really gives me a great sense of optimism that can be true
yeah,
at the end of a 2-year term, because we have all the ingredients, from our natural resources to our international borders to our history of manufacturing and investing in new industries to
yeah,
our incredible research institutions, U of M, MSU, Wayne State. We've
yeah,
got everything we need to be that place
yeah.
in 8 years. It just needs all of us working together to harness it and make that happen.
And from a transit perspective, do you feel like the why there is just basically economic development at the end of the day? The
Certainly. I mean, it creates jobs.
yeah,
It drives down costs ultimately, and it actually expands the footprint of the workforce so that you
right,
could live in Kalamazoo and then just commute into Ann Arbor or Detroit for work, or vice versa. I'd
yeah,
also like to see spurs from Detroit to Toronto and
yeah,
from Kalamazoo to Chicago, so that you could live in one place and work in another with
yeah,
ease. And we don't have any of that right now. Other states do, and that is a big reason why someone could choose to move to a northeast town in Boston or New York as opposed to Michigan.
right.
And so we have to, I think, build that type of infrastructure if we want to retain our talent here in our state and grow our economy.
Jocelyn, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the conversation and learned a lot. And thanks for your work at the DMV and with all the elections. And good luck to you in the governor's race.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, and look forward to seeing you soon.